Hello, hello, hello. Happy Friday. We made it through another week. Yes, the hair is wet again. It's summertime. All right. So, whatever. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Happy Friday. We made it. Listen, this is going to be a good conversation. And I know I say that every single time. And I'm going to always say that every single time. We are going to be talking about why your network already has your first 5 clients. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be talking about why your network has your first 5 clients. We're just going to jump right into it because it's Friday and I'm feeling good. Welcome back to another episode of Nick at Noon. My name is Nick Scott. I'm the founder and CEO of Her Income Edit. If you have never heard of us, we are an online education platform that is designed to help women turn their existing skills into coaching, income, digital products, and online businesses so they can earn more, depend less on traditional employment, and design a life on their terms. If you haven't already, you're going to want to go get your notebook and your pens for this one, or whatever it is that you take notes on. Pop open a notes app on your phone. Go grab your water, your tea, your juice, your coffee, your wine, your cocktail, whatever it is you're sipping on, because I want you to get comfortable. I want you to stay a while because this conversation is going to be good. Share the link to this video in the group chat. Share it in your Facebook groups. Share it on your Reddit threads. Drop it in your LinkedIn groups. Wherever you are online, share the link to this video. We're talking about where you're going to get your first 5 clients. Text the link to this video to your friend, to your cousin, to your sister, to your mama, to your daddy, to your auntie, to your uncle. Text it to somebody who keeps saying that they want to do something for themselves. Because what we are talking about today, we are talking about how you don't need to go viral in this thing to get your clients. You don't need to have the big audience. Listen, your network already has your first 5 clients, okay? We are going to be getting into something today that I think is going to completely change something in you. And I want to be clear about something right up front, because this video is not about grinding harder. You hear me say it all the time. If you're new here, welcome. Hi, my name is Nick, but we are not grinding all our lives over here. We are not everyday hustling over at Her Income Edit. This is not going to be about building your audience from scratch. This is not going to be a conversation about going viral. And this is not about cold pitching strangers on the internet, okay? Listen, I am highly introverted, all right? So when it comes to sales, even if you're introverted, you have to do sales. But we don't have to cold pitch people to get our first 5 clients, all right? Listen, this conversation is about something that you have already been building for years without realizing that it was worth money, and I'm talking about your network. So stay with me, get comfortable. And I know that you have heard, hello, 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 thanks for joining. I know you've heard the phrase, your network is your net worth, 1,000 times. If you have heard that phrase, give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the chat. You've heard it probably more than 1,000 times. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you that your network, it isn't just a career asset. Your network is a client pipeline. And depending upon where you are in your career, you could be sitting on your first 5 clients right now. And this is not theory. This is not going to take you years. You could be literally sitting on your first 5 clients right now. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. But first, I want to paint a picture, because context really does matter here. I want you to think back to the moment that you realized that your paycheck wasn't keeping up with your life. This doesn't have to be a dramatic moment or a moment of crisis. I'm talking about just this random Friday afternoon when you looked at your bank account and you thought, I am working way too hard for this to be this number. Has that happened to you? Maybe you just did the math on what your next raise would be, And then you realize that it wouldn't change much for you and your family. Maybe you watched someone get laid off and you thought to yourself, you know what? That could have been me. Maybe you have been passed over for something that you were 100% qualified for, and then you started wondering whether or not the system that you've been giving the best years of your life is ever going to give back to you at the same rate that you give to it. Maybe, you know, it didn't have to be anything dramatic. Listen though, that moment, that random Friday afternoon moment, that is one of the most common experience among professional women that nobody talks about out loud, for real. Because we have been taught to be grateful, right? Not to complain, to stay focused, to keep your head down, to walk tall against the rain, to trust the plan, right? But here's the thing. The plan made sense when the plan was designed. But the plan was designed in a world where companies rewarded loyalty. Listen, loyalty is one of my love languages, all right? I am loyal. And I like to be in loyal environments. But that plan, it was designed in a world where companies rewarded loyalty, where advancement was a linear straight line. It was designed in a world where the job that you walked into, it was the same job that you would still have 10, 15, 20, 30 years later. But guess what, y'all? That world is gone, long gone. And I'm not saying this to scare you. I am saying this because the first step to building something that protects you, that protects your family, that protects your future, and that protects your legacy, the first step is being honest about what the current structure can and cannot do for you. Your job can pay you. Your job cannot guarantee you. And that distinction is where today's entire conversation is rooted and grounded in. And here is the part that this gets real interesting, because the same career that taught you everything, I'm talking about all of the years that you've been in this career, all the rooms that you've been in, the problems you've solved, the relationships you've built. Your career didn't just make you employable. It made you an expert, and experts get paid big money, honey. And they get paid not just by employers. They get paid by clients. And that's the piece that most people in your position have never been shown. So today we are going to talk about how to look at your existing network with completely fresh eyes. We're going to talk about what your first client looks like. We're going to talk about why the way you've been thinking about who would ever pay you is probably too narrow. And by the time we're done with this conversation, I want you to be able to name 5 people in your life right now who could benefit from what you already know. And that is the whole mission of today's episode. Okay, now let's get into it. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Now let me tell you about a conversation that has really stuck with me. A woman reached out to me and she was frustrated. She had been in supply chain for over a decade. She was not an entry-level employee in this industry, right? She was the person that people called when a vendor fell through at midnight before a major product launch. She investigated international logistics and disruptions. She managed vendor contracts across multiple countries, and she trained a team of 12 people. And she wanted to know if she had what it takes to start a coaching business. And I want you to hear that question the way that I heard it. This woman had a decade of high stakes, proven results, and crisis tested experience. And her question to me was whether or not she had what it takes. So I let that process for a minute before I responded to her because this question is not just a question about her. That question, do I have what it takes? It is asked by some of the most accomplished women that I know. I'm talking about women with advanced degrees, women who have led teams, secured funding, overhauled systems, and built programs from literally nothing. These women, their LinkedIn profiles look like a masterclass in professional achievement, right? And they're still sitting there in a DM to me asking me if they have enough. And that pattern tells me something really important. It tells me that the barrier to building a coaching business is almost never skill. It is almost always belief. And I'm not talking about belief in some fluffy motivational poster sense. I'm talking about a very specific, very logical belief that what you know has value outside of the context where you learned it. And that belief, it doesn't just automatically become. It has been built intentionally. Like it has been, you've been trained to believe this, because the entire employment environment that most of us have grew up in, it taught us that our value is contextual, that our value exists in a context, right? We've been taught that your title is what makes you valuable, that it's the department that you work in, that's what makes you valuable. Your employer, the logo, the name of your employer, that's what makes you valuable. And then the second that you remove any of those containers, we've been taught to believe that you're back at zero. And that's a lie. That is a lie. And the crazy thing is we have internalized this belief so thoroughly that we don't even notice that it's operating within us until someone asks us whether we'd consider charging for what we know how to do for our skills outside of work. And the immediate internal response is, who would pay me? I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't have anything that I can sell. I'm not like you, Nick. I want to offer you just a different lens on, to that question, okay? Because who would pay me for that? I'm not an entrepreneur. I can't do what you do. Those are all reasonable, right? But the thing that's underneath all of that, the thing that is creating the hesitation in any of those responses is this. And that is, are you enough outside of the structure, that the structure that tells you you're enough? Are you enough outside of the structure that tells you you're enough? And the answer to that question is 100%, no doubt, yes. And I'm not trying to stroke your ego. I am not trying to pump your head up. I'm just being real, because the skills that you have built, they are transferable by the nature of what a skill is. The structure where you built the skill, it was a training ground. It wasn't the destination, y'all. The conditioning that tells women that they need more credentials before they deserve to charge for what they know is one of the most expensive lies in our culture. We spend years earning the thing. We earned it. And then we spend a whole lot of more years trying to prove to ourselves that we've earned it. But here's what I want you to understand about this. Your skills, your knowledge, your expertise, that is not a credential. That is a real differentiator in the distance between what you know, and what someone else is trying to figure out. And your skills, they exist whether or not you have a certification, whether or not you have a title, whether or not anyone has ever officially called you an expert, because you know something and someone else doesn't know something that you know. That differential right there is the foundation of every coaching business that has ever existed. Hello. Thanks for joining. Are y'all feeling me? Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down in this? Show me some love on YouTube. So, I want to challenge a mental model that might be sitting in the background while you're listening to this episode. And that is, most women think about their skills in a very specific way. You're thinking about your skills as something that you perform for your job, right? As in, I use my skills at work. And that perspective, that skills are something that you use at work, it makes it almost impossible for you to imagine charging for those same skills outside of your job. Because that lens, the only legitimate buyer of your skills is an employer, is your job. But that is a property of how you're thinking about this. That's not your skills, because your skills don't belong to your job title, they belong to you. So think about a grant writer who has raised millions of dollars for a nonprofit. She doesn't just only know how to write grants for nonprofits. She knows how to construct a compelling case for an investment. She knows how to find aligned funders. She knows how to build relationships with decision makers who hold the key to those resources. This grant writer knows how to tell a story that converts skeptics into supporters. Listen, those are skills. And any small business owner, any consultant, or any founder who needs to raise funds or pitch investors would pay a premium to learn from someone who has already done it at that level. So the question is not, it has never been, do you have skills worth paying for? The question is, who specifically benefits from what you already know? Because that question, that part of the question, the who specifically, that is where your client list starts. And I'm going to, you know what? I'm just going to dig in, double down on this, because I think this is the piece that keeps getting skipped in most conversations about building a second stream of income. Because people are they're constantly telling you to niche down. They're telling you to find your audience, and they're giving you worksheets to identify your ideal client avatar, right? And all of that is fine, lovely, peachy, and dandy. But before you do any of that work, there is a step that comes before that. And that is, you have to stop looking at your experience as something that belongs to your employer and start looking at your skills as an asset that belongs to you. And that is just not a cosmetic thing for you to do. That is the entire foundation of your business. Because the women who struggle to find clients aren't struggling because the clients don't exist. They're struggling because they haven't made that internal shift yet. They are still showing up to the search and they're carrying the identity of an employee rather the identity of an expert. And when you're out here trying to get clients, people can feel that. They can feel that energy. Because when you're not clear on your own value, that uncertainty, it translates energetically. But when you're clear, you can feel it. And the conversation, it hits different. Your offer is going to be different. Your confidence is going to be different. And here's what I want you to really understand before we move on in this. Clarity doesn't come from more time. It does not come from more research. It does not come from more preparation. Clarity comes from making a decision. It comes from making a decision to look at everything that you have built, everything that you know, and all the people that you've helped, and call it what it is. An asset. It is an asset. So the moment that you stop treating your skills as a job qualification and start treating them as a service is the moment that your network stops being a list of contacts and it starts being a client pipeline. That is the move, y'all. That is the move. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. So I want to offer you a perspective that most people don't talk about when they discuss building a coaching business, because people are always talking about marketing. They always talk about social media. They even talk about lead generation and email lists and funnels and content strategies, right? And listen, eventually we get to that. Okay? I know you're eager to get to all of those things. Eventually we get to that because those things do matter. But your first clients, your first 5 clients, they don't need any of that. Your first 5 clients, they don't require you to have an Instagram following. They don't require you to have a website. They don't require you to have a carefully curated and crafted launch strategy. Your first 5 clients require exactly one thing. One. They require a relationship. And you already have hundreds of relationships. Let's talk about what your network is made up of, okay? Because most people think that their network as a bunch of contacts that they've collected or people that, they just hang out with and go to happy hour with. They think about their network being LinkedIn connections or former colleagues and people from a conference. And that right there is the surface layer. Your network is so much deeper than that. Your network is every single person who has ever watched you solve a problem. It is every single person who has come to you with a question that they didn't know who else to ask. Your network is every person who has said, you should probably send me an invoice after you gave them advice. Your network is every person who has referred you to somebody, not to your company. They referred somebody to you. Every person who has followed your work across multiple jobs because they wanted to stay inside of your ecosystem and your orbit. Those people, that's not a contacts list. That is a warm audience. And warm audiences convert. And it isn't because they're being sold to, it's because they already trust you. And here's the pattern that I have seen play out across virtually every single woman that I have worked with who has launched a coaching business. Almost every single one. Their first clients were not strangers that they found online. Their first clients were people who had been waiting for them to show up. They have been waiting for the person that they already believed in to create something that they could invest in. And I want you to really think about that. Because there are people in your network right now who already see your value. They already see you in action. They've already watched you deliver results. They have evidence. They have personal witness evidence that you know exactly what you're talking about. So they don't need convincing. All they need is an invitation. Okay? Hello. Thanks for joining. Now, if you're taking notes, this might be the part where you might want to start to jot some things down because I want to break down the 5 categories of people that are already in your network who could become your clients. I'm not going to give you a script for how to pitch them, but I'm going to give you these categories so you can start to look at your existing relationships with a fresh set of eyes, okay? So category 1. The people who come to you for advice. Who are these people? You know them because they're the ones who text you when they're making a decisions. They're the ones who say, can I run something by you? They're the ones who are dealing with exactly the kind of problem that your skills are designed to solve. And here's the important thing. They are already treating you like a resource. You just haven't formalized it. So that's the first category. Category 2 are the people who have transitioned out of a similar professional space. So people in this category could be former colleagues, peers, or classmates who are navigating something that you have already navigated. These people are 2 steps behind you. And that 2-step gap, that gap is coaching territory. Category number 3 are the people who come specifically to you. They don't go to your job. They don't go to your company. They come to you. This is the 3rd category in your network. Because there is a very meaningful distinction between someone who comes to your organization for help versus someone who specifically seeks you out. Because one is a business relationship, the other one is a personal reputation. So if people are finding they're not finding your title or your firm, but you, that is a signal that these people belong in this category. And that signal is telling you that there is something in you that people in this category want access to, okay? Category 4 are the people who watch your growth and then they comment on your growth. So this category of people, they're not necessarily your closest relationships. Sometimes they're people in the peripheral. You know, there's someone who consistently likes your posts. It's someone who mentioned something that you said 3 months ago in a casual conversation. Because that kind of attention that they're paying to you, that is a form of investment. It's low stakes for them, but it tells you something. It tells you that they're paying attention specifically to what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're saying it, and how you're showing up. And that is a warm relationship, and it has room to deepen that relationship. That one is a very valuable category. And category 5 are the people who have referred others to you. And this one matters the most. Because when someone refers another person to you, they are putting their own credibility on the line. They're saying, listen, that person over there, she is worth your time. And that's not something that people do lightly, especially Black folks. Listen, those refers are your most invested supporters because they already believe in your value. They believe that it's high enough. And they believe in it enough to put their name on it, to stake their reputation. Now, I want you to look at those 5 categories, and I want you to think about your own network right now. And I am willing to bet that you can name at least one person in each one of those categories, can't you? And that means you can name 5 people who, with the right offer and the right validation, these 5 people could become your first clients. Didn't I tell you I was going to show you how to get your first clients in this conversation? What did I just do? Listen, you haven't been building a contact list for the last decade. You have been building a client base. You just haven't opened up your business yet. And here's something else that I want to add on top of that list that doesn't get talked about enough. Your existing network doesn't just know you, they trust you. And trust is the most expensive thing to manufacture in any business. I don't care what the business is. I want you to think about what it takes for a stranger to trust someone enough to hand them money in exchange for guidance. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes social proof. It takes content. It takes maybe a dozen or more touch points over months and months and months. And that right there is a long sales cycle. But your existing network has already done all that because they have seen you in context. They have watched you perform under pressure. They know your character, they know your communication style, and they know your follow through. And that trust right there is worth something. And it doesn't require a warm-up sequence or a nurture funnel because it's already there. It's already been done. And I want to talk about the mistake that I see a lot of smart, qualified women make when they first start thinking about getting into this. They decide that they need to build an audience before they build their business. So the first thing they do is they start creating content. They go open up a new Instagram account. They start posting and they're consistent, right? They're doing the thing. And they're doing this for months. And then they're waiting for a bunch of strangers to start to trust them. Meanwhile, you have an entire network full of people who already trust you. And you're not saying a single thing to those people. And the reason is, I've seen this 100 times. The reason is because talking to strangers through content, it feels more comfortable and it feels safer than talking to people who know you. I get it. Because there's something very vulnerable about letting the people in your existing life see you step into something new. Because there's a fear of judgment there. There's a fear of being seen as reaching. There's a fear of people thinking, who does she think she is? But here's what I want you to consider. The people in your network who already respect your judgment, they are not the same people who are going to think that. The people who have come to you for advice, who have referred others to you, who have watched your career and said, she is special, she is really going somewhere, those are the people who are rooting for you. They want to see you win. I want to see you win. And when you build something that these people can invest in, they are going to be proud of you. They're going to be proud of you for stepping into something that they have seen all over you for years, for months, for decades. So they're going to be proud to be your first clients. And it's not going to be because they're doing you a favor. Listen, if your friend signs up as your first client, it is not just your friend. That is a client. And they're not doing you a favor. They're doing it because they trust your outcome. The people who already know your work are not your hardest sell. They're your easiest yes. And I really want you to think about that for a second, because I have talked to so many women who think starting a coaching business means starting completely over. They think they need new everything. They think they need a new audience, new credibility, new proof. And listen, that belief, the belief that you have to start from zero, that is one of the main reasons that brilliant, experienced, credible women wait years before they do anything. Because they're waiting to be ready for something they're already ready for. You are waiting to be ready for something that you're already ready for. If you are taking notes, I want you to write that down and I want you to personalize it. I want you to write down, I am waiting to be ready for something that I am already ready for. Listen, the readiness that you're looking for, that you're waiting for, is not coming. You're already ready. The experience is there, the relationships are there, your credibility is there. What has been missing is a framework to put all of that together. And that is exactly what we are going to be talking about in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about why timing matters. I always talk about the importance of timing. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. So I want to say something, and I think it just needs to be said, just flat out. The job market right now is not stable. Not in the way that it was. Not in the way that many of us built our careers assuming that it would still be. Like, companies have spent the last several years making public commitments about equity and flexibility and employee well-being. And guess what? Those companies that did all those public commitments, they are pulling those commitments right on back. And they're not doing it slowly either. They're doing it like that. Like, return to office mandates are hitting industries that swore up and down remote and hybrid work was the new normal. DE&I programs that took years to build and millions of dollars to build are being dismantled in months. And then the women who built careers inside systems that publicly valued their advancement, they are watching those systems retreat. And I am not about doom and gloom, y'all. So I'm not bringing this up to be doom and gloom on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I am bringing this up because the window between I should probably build something else and I need something else right now, it is much narrower than people think. The women who who make a decision to do something during the I should probably phase, they have options. Because you can build with thoughtfulness. You can take your time and get your positioning right. You can build your first client relationships from a place of choice and not desperation. But the women who wait until, you know what, I need to do something right now. At that point, you're building under pressure. And when you're building under pressure, that is a completely different experience. And I don't want that for you. That's not what I want for you. Because here's what I have seen play out. And I want to talk about this specifically because this is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in this conversation. The women who feel most financially stable, they're often the most financially exposed. And that's because stability and safety are not the same thing. Stability is, I feel good right now, I'm stable right now. But safety is having options when that feeling of fine and feeling stable, when that stops being true, that's what safety is. Safety is having the options. Listen, a high salary, a senior title, a respected reputation inside of your company, those things create stability. They make you feel stable, right? But they don't create safety. Safety requires something outside of your job relationship. It requires something that continues to generate value regardless of whether or not your company decides to keep you, promote you, reorganize you out of existence. It doesn't matter because you're safe. Stability is what you have. Stability is what you have, and safety is what you build. And the interesting thing about safety is that it doesn't have to replace your stability. It can coexist with it. Both can be true. You don't have to quit anything. You don't have to blow up anything that you've spent years building. The model that I talk about with every woman that I work with, it starts with a single premise. Build the thing while your job is still good. Build it while your job is stable. Build it while you have the luxury and the privilege of choosing your timeline instead of being forced into a timeline. The best time to build a lifeboat is when you don't need it. It's not when you're drowning. Now, let's talk about what building it means in a practical sense, because I think there's a version of this conversation that gets extremely abstract real quick. And I want to stay grounded here. Because building a second stream of income from your existing skills is not about becoming a full-time entrepreneur overnight. That is not what I teach. That is not what I'm talking about. This is not about building a brand, a podcast, a course, and a social media presence while you're doing this either. This is not about becoming a different person. This is about creating just one additional revenue relationship outside of your 9-to-5. Just one to start. Just one to start. I'm talking about one client engagement, one outcome that you deliver, and one proof point. That is the beginning in all this. And I want to just take a moment and talk about this word proof that I just said for a second. I said one proof point because proof is the thing that makes every single step after this easier. The biggest confidence problem that I see with women who are ready to build but haven't started yet is not that they lack proof of their skill. It's that they lack proof that their skill transfers outside of an institutional context. Because inside your company, you have years of evidence that you can deliver, right? But until you've done it for a client who chose you independently by her own faculty, a part of your brain is always going to keep asking whether it was the title, your team, your resources, the system, or is it you? Listen, your first client doesn't just pay you. They answered the question that you've been asking yourself for years. And the one proof point that I just talked about, that is worth more than any amount of preparation. Trust me when I say, because it is the moment that your internal story is going to shift from, you know what, I think I could do this, to I know I can do this. And everything that you build after that, it is faster, it is clearer, and it is more confident. And I also want to talk about something that doesn't get addressed enough. It just doesn't get enough airtime in conversations about building multiple streams of income or building your next stream of income while you're still working. The mental load of the transition is what I want to talk about, because it is real. Adding something new to a life that is already full, that's not nothing. Because now you're wondering, do I have enough time for this? Do I have enough energy for this? You're thinking about what do I even say to people, right? And I'm not going to minimize any of that because that is real, but I do want to give you just a different way to look at this. Right now, your professional energy, it primarily flows in one direction, right? That professional energy, it's going into your employer. It's going into your job. It's going into a structure that was not designed to return that energy back to you on an equal stake. Like, there is no reciprocity in that. So what you're talking about when you think about building a second stream of income is adding a second channel for that same energy. Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down? So you're not doubling your output. You're redirecting a portion of what you're already generating towards something else, but you're also taking a portion of that and you're generating towards something that belongs to you. And that's not a burden, it's leverage. Because the same hours, the same skills, the same professional power, when it's pointed at something that can compound instead of clocking out, that is the entire game. And because of everything that we have talked about here today, the network that you've built, the relationships that you've cultivated, the credibility that exists in your professional orbit, that first one is not as far as you think it is. That first stream of income is not as far as you think it is. Listen, because hello, thanks for joining. The version of starting a business that lives in your head, it probably feels like just way too much. It's overwhelming, right? Because right now you're thinking about websites and logos and legal filings and a full offer suite and an email list and revenue targets. Listen, if that's what you're thinking about when you think about starting a business, it does feel impossible while you're working a demanding full-time job. Let's just be straight up about that, right? But that's not what getting started in this looks like. Getting started in this looks like one conversation, and having that conversation with somebody who already trusts you, and having that conversation with somebody trust you about a problem that you've already solved, and having that conversation with someone who trusts you about a problem that you already solved with an offer to help them solve that same problem that you've already solved. And that conversation, that's your business. Everything else that I just talked about, websites, logos, all that other stuff, that is infrastructure, and it gets built around proof. You're not waiting for the right moment to start. You're waiting to give yourself permission to start where you already are. And I want to be the one who tells you that you have it. You have it. So before, how long have we been here? Okay, I'm good. Just checking the time. It's been about 45 minutes. So I would just want to take a minute to address something that you might be thinking about in the back of your mind right now. Because I have been talking about coaching this entire time, and there's a version of that word coaching that might be making you a little bit skeptical. Because you might hear it and you think of life coaches with an aesthetic on Instagram and vague promises about unlocking your potential. Or maybe you think it requires some kind of training or certification or personal brand that you don't have right now, right? Or maybe you think of coaching as something soft, something that's maybe a side hustle for people who don't have a specific skill set. And I'm pushing back on every one of those assumptions. Because when I talk about coaching, all I'm talking about is skills-based coaching. And that's what I teach. This is not about guiding people through vague personal transformation. This is about packaging what you already know into a structured container that helps someone else get a specific result. Okay? So here is the thing about how women have been conditioned to think about our skills. Because we've been trained by who? By our culture, by everybody. We have been trained to use our skills for outputs, for deliverables, for projects, for reports, for results that our 9-to-5 measures and evaluates, right? But we are rarely taught to think about the transfer of those skills. Like, who else could benefit from knowing what we know? How could what we've spent years developing inside an institution, how can that create value outside of this company? And here's where all this gets interesting though. The skills that are most valuable inside of your 9-to-5 are often the exact skills that are most underdeveloped in small businesses, in independent operators, and in early stage ventures. Because what feels ordinary to you is often extraordinary to the person who needs it. The distance between where you are and where someone else is trying to get, that is your coaching opportunity. And that opportunity doesn't require you to be perfect. It doesn't require you to know everything either. It requires you to know more than the person that you're helping. And I also want to talk about something about accessibility, because I really think it matters here. Because there is a narrative in a lot of circles that coaching is for people who can't get a real job. And I want to dismantle that one all the way. Listen, some of the most sophisticated women I have worked with have built coaching income streams that exceed what their full-time job pays them. And it's not because they're influencers or because they went viral. It's because they took a clearly defined problem that a specific person has. They built a structured way to address that problem, and then they offered it to people who already knew and trusted them. That is not hustle culture. That is strategic monetization. That is a strategic monetization of your skills. It is the same logic that companies use when they pay consultants hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour. The difference is that the consultant gets to keep that money. Guess what? You can be that consultant, and your network already has people who could hire you in that capacity. They just need to know that the option to hire you even exists. And one more thing before we move on. And I want to talk about the belief that you need a big audience before you can make money, because that belief is one of the most costly myths in this space. Audience dependent income, those models, it requires traffic, it requires time, and it requires consistency to build. Relationship dependent income, that model, it requires trust that you've already spent years earning. So your first 5 clients are not going to find you through an algorithm. They're going to find you through a conversation, and conversations happen in networks, which brings us back to exactly where we started, right? Your network isn't a waiting room, it's a launch pad. And I want to tell you what it looks like to launch from that network. Okay? Listen, the perception that you need to have built a successful coaching business in order to coach, come on, y'all. Like, you should somehow already be on the other side of the thing you're trying to build in order to be qualified to guide someone through it. That doesn't even make, that's bass backwards. And it's not how any other professional field works, does it? A tax attorney doesn't need to have made millions of dollars personally to counsel clients on tax strategy, do they? No. A structural engineer doesn't need to have built a skyscraper with their own hands to design a building and a structure that's safe. What you need, what they needed, is just deep knowledge of the domain. You need a clear methodology, and you need a skill to apply it to someone else's specific situation. And that's coaching. Your credentials are your years of doing the work inside of your field. Your methodology is the repeatable process that you've used to get results, even if you haven't named it yet. Listen, I host a free training every single Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And last week, or this past Tuesday, in the training, someone said that they literally help people and create a process when they're helping people. So this person who is in this training, she already coaches. She's just not getting charged for it, right? Like, you have a repeatable process the same way that this lady in my free training did. And listen, your specific client situation, that is the problem that someone in your network is already trying to solve. And here's another thing. I want to talk about I'm not ready, because ready is not a state that you come to. It is a standard that keeps you moving. So when you were new in your career, you waited until you felt ready for more responsibility, right? And then you got it. And then you moved the bar. And then you waited to feel ready for the next level, right? Listen, ready is a destination that never stops moving. It keeps on moving. The people who build things, the people who are doing this, they're not less uncertain than you are. They're just more committed to moving in spite of the uncertainty. Listen, readiness is a feeling. Decision is an action. And only one of those are going to build your business. And I want to talk to you about what building looks like in practice. I want to talk to you about what it requires. I want to talk about what it doesn't require. And I also want to talk about where Ignite fits into all of this. So I just want to give you a high-level picture of what it takes to convert your existing network into paying clients. I'm not going to be talking about tactics. I'm not going to be talking about scripts, and I'm not going to be giving you the step-by-step here, but I definitely want to talk about the landscape, because knowing the landscape is what helps you stop feeling lost in this. So I already showed you where your first 5 clients are. And I literally gave you the 5 categories of where your first 5 clients are. And I bet you wrote a name in each one of those categories, and that's where your first 5 clients are. So, okay. So now I want to tell you what the landscape of what this looks like. All right. So the first thing that all of this requires to convert your first 5 clients is clarity on your specific value. So this isn't a vague statement about helping people succeed or a generic tagline about your industry. I'm talking about specificity. What is the problem that you have solved, that you have repeatedly solved with measurable results? Who has that problem? And what does life look like for that person after you've helped them solve that problem? That is the core of your coaching offer. And women almost always have a clear answer to all 3 of those questions. You just haven't been asked to articulate it in the way that I'm asking you to articulate it, right? So the second thing that this requires is positioning. And let's be clear, positioning is not about how you describe yourself. It's about how the right person immediately recognizes that you are the person for them. And positioning, it starts with the relationships that you already have, because people who already know your work, they don't need a whole lot of convincing. They just need a clear, confident signal that this is something that you're offering. And that signal is everything, y'all. So the third thing that you need to convert those first 5 clients that you identified earlier in this conversation, the third thing that you need to convert them is a structured offer. You don't need a price, you don't need a rate, you need a structure. What does working with you look like? Over what period of time? Toward what specific outcome? Because that structure is what separates professional coaching from I'm just giving advice for free. It is also what makes it possible for you to price this with confidence. So the fourth thing that you need, and this is the one that surprises people, but the fourth thing that you need is a simple, repeatable way to deliver your work. This doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it needs to be consistent enough that you can deliver the same quality of outcome, whether it's your first client or your 5th client. Now, here's what I want to be very honest about. Can you figure out all this? Can you figure all this out on your own? Yep, you sure can. You can figure all this out on your own. But figuring it out on your own without structure, without community, without someone who's already built this looking over your shoulder and tapping you and saying, how about we go this way? The process is going to take some time. It's going to take a whole lot of time. And while you're trying to figure this thing out, you're also working a full-time job. You're also managing your life and probably somebody else's life. And you're trying not to let doubt creep in too much, all at the same time you're doing this, trying to figure this out on your own. And the women that I see move in this the fastest, they're not the most talented. They're the most structured because they have a framework, they have accountability, and they have somewhere to bring their questions to, the questions that come up at 10 o'clock p.m. on a random Friday. And when they're second guessing everything, they have this. Listen, clarity with no execution structure is just information. It is the structure that turns information into income. And that is exactly why I built Ignite. Ignite is a 12-week group coaching program, and everything that I talked about today, identifying your clients, getting clear on your value, building a structured offer, positioning yourself inside your existing network, all of that is the work that we do together. But let me tell you how it is not like every other program out there. Because this is not designed for someone who wants to eventually think about building a second stream of income. This is designed for the professional woman who is ready. This is designed for women who are ready to move. This is designed for women who's done enough of thinking. Okay? You're done thinking. You have skills that are worth paying for. You just need a framework, you need the structure, and you need the community to do it in. The next cycle of Ignite, it kicks off on September 14th. And I want to be really, really straight with you about why cohorts matter for this kind of work. Because building your first offer and finding your first clients and making your first sales are things that feel a lot less scary when you know that you're doing them along women who are at the same point that you're in. They're not ahead of you. They're not behind you. They are right there with you. They are working through the same questions. They're celebrating the same wins. There is something that happens in a cohort-based environment that does not happen when someone goes through content all by themselves. It is the difference between consuming information and building something, literally. Because information without community, it just keeps you thinking and spinning and analysis paralysis. But community with structure, it gets you moving. Now, if you have been watching this or you've been listening to this episode and you're thinking, you know what, this sounds exactly like what I need. That feeling is worth paying attention to because that feeling is data. It is telling you something that your calendar and your comfort zone might be trying to talk you out of. Listen, the version of you who builds this income stream, it doesn't have different skills, than the version of you right now. The difference is one version is going to make a decision and the other version is not. Ignite is the structure around the decision that you make. You can go to my website to learn all about Ignite at herincomeedit.com/ignite. You can click the link down in the description. You can drop the word Ignite in the comments. I'll make sure that you get the link directly. Enrollment is open right now. And the September 14th cohort has a limited number of spots because that's how cohort-based coaching works. In my programs, is not a tactic. It is a design choice that protects the integrity of the experience that I want for everyone in it. So if you want to know whether or not Ignite is right for where you are right now, the information is all on my website. And if you've been thinking about building a second stream of income from your existing skills, and you want to do this in the next 90 days before we end 2026, and head into 2027, and you want to have your coaching business going, this is where it starts. I want to close this conversation. Hello. Thanks for joining by coming back to something that we talked about at the beginning. And that is your network already contains your first 5 clients. And we proved it in this conversation because that sentence might have felt abstract when we started this conversation, right? But I hope it feels a whole lot more concrete now because you already found them. But here's what I want you to take with you when you leave this conversation. The thing that's been stopping you from building your second stream of income, it is not a missing skill. It is not a missing credential. It is not a missing audience, a missing strategy, or a missing moment in time. What's been stopping you is a missing framework for seeing what you already have as enough. Because every career asset you've built, I'm talking about the technical knowledge, the institutional experience, the professional relationships, the reputation in your industry. That is not just your resume. That is a business that is waiting to be organized. And the question was never whether or not you have what it takes. You have been proving you have what it takes for years. The question is whether or not you're going to position it. Are you going to position it for yourself? Or are you going to keep positioning it exclusively for somebody else's business? There is no version of your future where you look back and say, I'm so glad that I waited to build something on my own. That version doesn't exist. What does exist is the version who started messy, imperfect, uncertain, and before you felt completely ready. And then you watched it grow into something that gave you choices that your employer never could. That version is available to you right now. The best version of this story is not the one where you build your second stream of income after you need it. The best version of this story is the one where you built while you still had the luxury of choice. We talked about this earlier, right? Because choice is what financial optionality buys you. This isn't just about money. This isn't even about freedom that comes with this. This is about the ability to make decisions from a place I want to rather than a place of I have to. That's what this is about. This isn't about income for income's sake. This is about ownership of your time, of your future, and of your life, the life that you have already worked so hard to build. And you deserve this. You have spent your entire career making other people's visions happen. Now it's time to build one that belongs to you. Enrollment is open for Ignite. September 14th is the next cohort start date. The link for Ignite is in the description. You can go to my website at herincomeedit.com/ignite. If you have questions, you can drop them in the comments and I'll answer them. And if you want to know more about Ignite, The page has everything that you need to know. And if you're sitting there thinking, I know I need to do this, but I'm scared, I just want you to know that that is the most normal thing in the world. Do it scared. And I'm not giving you bad advice. I'm telling you what every single woman I've watched build something from their skills has done. None of those women were ready. They were willing. I want to thank each and every one of you who popped in and out of today's conversation. This conversation matters to me because you matter to me. Not as a number, not as a conversion. You matter to me as someone who has spent years doing hard, valuable work that deserves to pay you more than one paycheck from your one job. Her Income Edit exists not just so I can show you how to build these coaching businesses, so you can earn more, so you can depend less on traditional employment, and so that you can start to design a life on your terms. You deserve options. You have your credibility. All we do inside of Ignite is organize it into something that pays you. I want to see you inside Ignite. Again, if you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comment section and I'll get to them. Thank you. Thank you again for popping in and out of today's conversation. Your presence is always appreciated. I do not take it for granted. Thank you so much for the love. Happy Friday. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And my name is Nick Scott. This has been another episode of Nick at Noon. I am here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Mountain Time, and I am dropping gems about all things strategy, tools, and mindset when it comes to coaching, income, digital products, and online businesses. And if that is something that you are interested in, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn your bell notifications on so you don't miss a beat. Share with your friends, share with your network, share with your biz bestie. Do not keep this information to yourself, okay? Have a wonderful weekend and